In your mind, why is the buddy process such a critical component of comfort precedes communication?
So for me, the buddy process it's helpful across the board for teachers. It's going to benefit teachers, it's benefiting the child, and it's helping the parent. And I think that's just, I'm going to speak globally, that I think all SCAT strategies have their place of helping all parties involved. It's a holistic approach. And so when I think about the buddy process, for me, the pieces that come up initially are, if your child or your student with selective mutism is coming into a brand new environment where they're not as comfortable, they haven't acclimated to the environment, they're not feeling as familiar, what better way to start them into this, new social engagement, but then to have somebody they already have an existing comfort, existing communication with, existing familiarity with, that they can go with. So for me, it's like passing the baton. So if you think of like a relay race, they're already having a baton of comfort right in their hands to take with them to move in. So it's starting them a little further along in their comfort by having that person that perhaps they've already had play dates with, if they're a younger child, and they've already spoken to this person and they've hung out with them and played with them. That familiarity is already there, and they're coming out into this new environment with that sort of comfortable anchor. And for our older kids, having someone that they've already hung out with who knows them, especially our middle school and high school kids, we certainly know that coming into brand new environments can be so awkward and uncomfortable. And if you have someone that you know and knows you, it's like your person, it allows you to walk into that environment and not feel so awkward, so isolated. So for me, that buddy process is key in stabilizing their first steps in comfort. And how that impacts others is, I think parents sometimes, when they know their child has someone who's an extension of them going into the school, if it's camp or school, the first day of the school year, a new extracurricular activity, scout, soccer, whatever that may be, or a new club, parents then are more relaxed and comfortable knowing their child has someone to move forward with. And then I think from a teacher perspective, teachers then feel a little more comfortable knowing this child has a buddy that they can come into the school year with, that they already know, that they can speak to if they have a need, perhaps if we work those strategies. But I think it helps everyone. And if everyone is feeling a little more comfortable and feels like, okay, we've got this first step underway, I think all parties, child, parents, and teachers, walk through this process a little more comfortable. So it's not just for the child. For me, the buddy process encompasses all people.
No, that's a great explanation. I think it's important to know too, for our listeners, the buddy process will help with the implementation of strategies, whether it's sounds to words, whether it's use of a verbal intermediary, to help that child make that progress and being with somebody comfortable. I think one of the things that maybe our listeners are struggling with is, especially post-COVID, although this has always been a challenge prior to COVID, but I've seen since COVID, play dates, get-togethers outside of home have absolutely diminished in comparison. Families just don't do it as much. I think they just got in a habit. They're busy. They're living their life. But there are many patients we see on an ongoing basis, and I know this comes up time and time again at camp every single day, of how do I help my child find a buddy? Like, my child doesn't have any friends. We don't have neighbors near us that we get together with. There's no one, we haven't had outside play dates. So how would you say, and I'll definitely share my ways as well, to find buddies within the school environment? That's number one. And I think the other question is, how do we get these schools to be able to implement a buddy process? So we're going to answer those two questions kind of quickly. But I think that's important, because we can pick all the buddies we want, but if the school's not implementing the buddy process, which has to be implemented, there's just nothing else to say. Children aren't going to become friends and start making progress on their own without having this basic setup. It doesn't happen. Or if it happens, it takes a really, really long time, because you're asking these children to, initiate non-verbally, to go up to be able to make friends, to have that consistency. It's going to take the school involvement. It's going to take teachers facilitating strategies. It's going to take some of the specials, social workers, psychologists, if needed, to have these small group opportunities outside of the room. It's just going to have to be there. Without that, I don't know what to tell people. It doesn't just happen miraculously. So I guess to go back to, how do we help them find the right buddies?
I think this is a really good question. I also think it's been a challenging question that I've heard a lot of parents share, that it has gotten harder, as you said. And so a few things. One, in the school environment, just to piggyback, and I think, hearing the parents' challenge, because we could say, just find a buddy, get them acclimated to some new friends and get them comfortable. And I think parents often come back with, how do I do that? And I think that's a really important question. In the school environment, certain elementary schools, we're just seeing a growing trend of, it's not the same as it might have been before, where you can meet, you just know, the kids in your class, their parents, and you see these parents. Oftentimes there's, for privacy, we're just not sharing parent information with everyone. Oftentimes it's one or two parents can sign up for a class party to help out or to volunteer in the classroom, and we don't always have access to seeing all the kids and their parents at pickup. And so because of that, and because kids aren't always, their schedules, as you said, whether we're doing sports or activities on the weekend, we may not even be gravitating towards the same extracurricular things on the weekend. So how do parents get to know other kids in the class when things are changing? And I think that's sort of just a growing, place to look for better solutions and talk to the school. So a few things that I might suggest to parents when this is the case, and again, thinking ahead of all different ages, a few things that I look for if your child does not have any peers or buddies yet. A few things we can do. There's things we can do before school starts and during the school year, depending on when we're showing up to this challenge. One is, if it's before the school year begins, yes, you want to make sure we're sort of being active in, if we're having play dates at your local pool over the summer or in your neighborhood, asking others, parents, questions of, what grade is your child going into, or do you know who your teacher is going to be yet? Those are just from a parent perspective. We need to be facilitators of, we have to seek out the information. So things that you can do in your neighborhood, among playdates in your neighborhood, local pool, if you're joining a pool, or if you're doing extracurriculars or camps over the summer, is to ask questions. That's one piece to get to know if you do have anyone who is in your school. I've recommended this next strategy to a number of families coming into new grades over the summer, where I'll say, from a personal standpoint as a parent, and I usually do this for those in elementary school, I say K-6. If you are on social media, let's say Facebook, for instance, you have the opportunity to create a Facebook page for your child's grade. So for instance, you could say, my child goes to Smithville Elementary School, and I'm going to create a page. My child's going into second grade. Parents of second graders and you can use an abbreviation for the school name. By doing that, you can you can contact the school counselor over the summer or other admin and share that you started this page if a parent should ask. If your child's coming back for an orientation night, you can share that Facebook page. And that sometimes also helps to get people acclimated. And so they can share that information. That information can then be given to school staff so other parents can join on and they can be part of that group. So this would be other second grade parents who find out about your Facebook page. And what that does is, over the summer, kids can join in these groups through social media, and you're having hangouts. Not all these kids may be part of your class, but that's just one way. If you're not familiar with who the kids are yet, you can take an empowered role of saying, how can I create a social place that parents get to know each other, and how can I ask the counselor, or once I know my teacher, to share this information among my peers, or share it with parents at orientations or back to school night. Those are some things before the school year begins. But once we're in school, let's say we don't do that and we come into the school year and we don't know, some things that we might need to be looking for is, one, if your child maybe is not gravitating toward, all kids in the class yet, but mentions one or two kids to you once they're acclimated to that group or that school year. Things that I look for and I might share with my clients is, if your child is coming home and sharing some names of individuals, take note of those names. This is where we might then begin to ask, are they participating in any extracurricular activities that you can parallel outside of school? Can we do play dates with any kids from school? And do we then go to the teachers and ask for more information, or can you share information with these parents that I would love to get to, have a play date with my child and theirs? And these are just some ways that we might begin to orchestrate some getting to know you if you don't. And I will say that a lot of our students coming into their grades, no matter the elementary school age grade, let's say, for instance, if we're speaking to elementary school parents, sometimes if it's a new school, let's say we just moved and we don't know anyone, yes, it might take a little bit of time to get used to the classroom and warm up. But this is also a two-part component of, how can we find out names of children that my child might be interested in, but this is where we do have to get the teachers involved to have some information. So that's going to be really important for a lot of our families. And for our older kids, it's even harder because, like you said earlier, we can't ask our teens to just go up and initiate and start conversation with friends. That is so challenging for all kids of all ages, even some of us as adults, to just walk up and initiate conversation. So we really have to look at what clubs, what small group opportunities are available in school. Who are we sitting near? Who are we doing activity and life with during the school day? Because these are the people that we're going to attempt to build out from and expand from.
No, these are all great ideas. One thing I would say that I'd like to add, because everything you said was just great. I love that Facebook idea. It's wonderful. And utilizing school professionals to maybe even contact other families saying, are you interested in doing get-togethers or activities, let's say over the summer and so forth, is talking to the teachers. So let's say the child's in school, because remember, let's think this is a child that's not very engaging. They're not very comfortable. Whether you're preschool, elementary, or middle school, asking the teacher, who do you think are good matches for my child? This happens a lot where, let's say we have a child, I'm thinking of a third grade little girl I'm working with now, and she happens to love, 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 love art. And that's her thing. And there's another little girl in the class that also loves, 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 loves art. This could be anything. Finding the areas of interest that these children can connect with. So the teachers are very conscious with pairing, grouping, sitting a child with other children who seem to have similar interests, maybe similar academic levels. As we know, many of our kids are very bright. So they are stimulated by maybe higher level interests. Pair and group them with those children so that they can feel connected. Also games and activities. If they don't know that right away, we go back to those golden rules of the buddy process, the get-togethers outside of school, the small groups in the room, the small groups out, lunch bunches, doing things like lunch bunch or friendship group with games and activities based on their stages. So even if they're nonverbal, they can point, they can show, the teacher can facilitate, hand over, take over to other children to help that move along. Doing different activities like interview games, headbands, all sorts of friendshipy group ideas based on their stage of communication and their comfort to build that away from the group. Because very often our kids, when they're in the midst of what I call a group, their true personalities are not coming out. So where they start to come out is away from the group. So when it comes to play dates or get-togethers, one, it's awkward if you don't have a connection. When you're a preschooler or even an elementary student, especially early elementary, it's really easy for parents to talk with teachers, set the world up for them, as I call silent goals. But as children age, it's awkward. So when parents, and this happens all the time, parents are like, my middle schooler, my high schooler are not setting up get-togethers. I don't get it. I need her to ask this friend. Well, number one, the child doesn't have the comfort and connection enough to be able to initiate even non-verbally a get-together. They just can't do that yet. It doesn't mean they won't. So we have to rely on the school to help us find those buddies and pair and group and sit with those children so that in the school environment, that is all happening. And then through that, we can consider get-togethers. But I have families that can't get get-togethers much. It's just really, really hard. Of course, the ones that do, they do the best. And bringing 1-2 kids over, then rotating kids in and out. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. I've had to kind of transition to smaller and larger groups using the buddy process. But I think it's really important because if we don't rely on the school and we don't work closely with the school, these things are not going to happen.